Good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock noon. We're here for the Dorman Lunch and Learn. Today, previewing the Zenith scan tool. My name is G. Trulia. I'll be your instructor. And you may be going, what is and who is the Zenith? Well, the Zenith scan tool, we'll get into. It is a very formidable tool because it's the old G-Scan, and they do Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. Specifications we're going to talk about on the unit. We're going to talk about OBD2, generic, enhanced Hyundai, and hybrid EV battery cells. So we're going to show you some of the power of this tool as we go through it. Okay, so here's basically what it looks like. This is the tool itself. There is the VCI. This is a J2534 capable programming hard box there that you can utilize. And the scan tool itself, a nice size screen, and we'll go through it. So who is the Zenith company? Their EZDS is a automotive company that specializes in making scan tools like the G-Scan that I have underlined right here. And they're out of Korea. So they support the Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis, as I just said a couple of minutes ago. It's a very, very formidable tool that you can do a lot of stuff with. Excellent on Asian vehicles. So excellent again on them. It basically is a 2.2 gigahertz processor and Android 11, 4 gig internal and 64 gig. Has a micro card. It's a 10.1 inch screen, 8 megapixel. It has a whole bunch of neat stuff, and you can see there's even an HDMI out, because switch to the scan tool for a second there, Doreen, and just show them. That's what you'd be seeing is the scan tool screen. So you can make this on your diag cart into a big screen, buy a 40-inch screen on your diag cart, put an HDMI cable to it, and you got yourself one big viewing area, right? Some of the other things here, quick access to most service functions without a lot of navigation. Bi-directional communication with 24-volt trucks and buses. That's a biggie. Ready for most protocols, including CAN FD and DOIP. Ultra-fast topography scan, we'll show you that. Remote diagnostic functions with J2534. Wireless Bluetooth technology. Latest ADAS software calibration, all in one package. It's a pass-through device with J2534, and fast and easy diagnostic reports that you can print and send to a customer. Okay, so some of the different screens here we'll show you real quick before we get into other ones. You got text, you got graphing, you can do a bunch of stuff. So here, when we first went into this Hyundai we have behind us, this is a 2024 Hyundai. It basically will go in, identify the car by a one push button type of setup, and we're going to show you that live. But let's go through the screens here before we go live on the vehicle, okay? So here, when you do that, it gives us the VIN, gives us all the calibration numbers, and you can see in the background, I'm going into generic OBD2. It's going to have my readiness tests, current data, diagnostics, monitor information, test, vehicle info, a whole bunch of good OBD2 information included, mode 6. So here's what the readiness test will show you. It tells us we got any DTCs, we have none. It tells us the fuel, misfire, comprehensive component monitors. They're all complete. That's what the COM. The catalyst monitor doesn't have a heated cat. EVAP system, no secondary air, no AC system, and the oxygen sensor and oxygen sensor monitor. And notice it always tells you where the voltage is that you're connected with your VCMI. So it knows, A, is the voltage going low or not. Now, since this vehicle is a hybrid, I do not have a battery maintainer on it, because this vehicle could handle, you know, our 1 hour webinar here without doing that. And you can see other stuff here, closed loop status, calculated load. A little note here with calculated load. this is one of the PIDs you should pick, because at sea level, and this is important, you got to know where you're at. We're roughly 300 feet above sea level, being 40 miles north of the World Trade Center. So basically, we know if we do pedal to the metal within a car length, we should get about 90% of calculated load if we have good air intake, okay? If we have any exhaust restriction or air intake problem, we got it. We're looking at volumetric efficiency, all right? Very, very important. And you can see, always look at long-term fuel trim, short-term, and here the motor was running at 1400 RPMs, okay? You can change from centigrade to Fahrenheit. If you look at the last screen here, I had it on centigrade, then I moved here, I made it Fahrenheit, okay? So whatever you're used to, you can see what's going on. Notice that they still call them oxygen sensors. This is not an oxygen sensor vehicle, okay? The front sensors on this vehicle are air-fuel ratio sensors, and they're roughly 1.9 volts at a good hot idle, okay? That would be a good reading on Hyundai Kia. So you can see again, it just gives us the whole thing here in generic. Once we're done with generic, we could stop there for a minute and go, hey, let's look at mode 6 data. And going into mode 6, you see what I did? I went into this test ID B4, and that is the catalyst, okay? And it's telling me the maximum, okay, the minimum, and I'm at 0.062. So I'm way under 0.800, and it passes that particular test. Now you could do this for all of the mode 6 information. It's very fast and quick. You'll see when we hook up in a few minutes. Topography. Now this is a big thing, and since these guys make it for the OEs, they do a very, very good job. You can see it goes through the powertrain CAN system, gives us everything in green is good. If it's grayed out, that means it's not on the vehicle, okay? So there is the first screenshot of it. Here's the rest of the screenshot, okay? And you'll see how fast it does all of this, okay? So you can clear all DTCs at this point. You can list stuff. You can, go into log data if you want to save it. And you can see check read DTCs if it's in yellow, not scanned. System with DTCs, scanned, scanning in blue, and not equipped. So to give you all that up there in one shot. And here, if you're graphing something out, I just started the graph on this. You can see we have a pretty steady line of oxygen sensor 1. That's going to be bank 1 sensor 1, okay? And that would give you a particular reading. Here you got the rear O2, and it's telling us, maximum 860. We're at 855. And you can see fuel trim and stuff. And of course, if you graph it out and let it run for a while, you will see that it can do all different graphing stuff, as you're going to see here. Short term went down, long term went up. The map went from low to high. And again, you could do it in kilopascals or in, I switched it over to standard from metric. Misfire counts, a real good thing to do. If you have misfires, well, when you want to graph them out and see exactly what they can do, sure. So you have that bit of information there. Here's more mode 6 stuff with the oxygen sensor, sensor 1. Notice the different tests we have. You got a maximum voltage of 1, minimum 0, and we are at a 0. So anything at a number and up to the max number is a pass. When we ran the second test here, it says 32, minimum 0.7, we're at 1.038. And you can see your results right there in mode 6, or graph it out looking like this. Real good stuff. Now here is another thing here. We went into actuation test. This means you have bidirectional control. And by the way, you can see this thing does a mobilizer. It is very good, in fact, on a mobilizer. This is a very formidable tool, and you could get in with start-stop technology that this vehicle has. It is a hybrid, so of course it's going to have that. And here it'll give you all the stuff with data analysis items, where your battery voltage is at with the state of charge of the high voltage battery, 53.5% when I was playing with it. We'll see what it's at. And you can see if the start key is off or on, the immobilizer, if it's ready or not. And then when you go into battery stuff here, so state of charge of the high voltage battery is 50.5. Total voltage of the battery pack is 232.9. We have a current value in amperage of 3.8 amps, 14 degrees in Fahrenheit, it says. Not that cold out, but I'm not sure where they pull these numbers up from. And the low and the high value, 13 and 14. Maybe that's centigrade, but look at this, really nice setup to give you all the battery cells. Now, what do you notice about these battery cells? The low value is 3.6. The high value is 3.64, 3.62. The average is 3.63. So this battery is pretty balanced. Now, that's an important thing for you to look at. You need to look at the average and the low and the high. There are 64 different cells in this particular battery pack. And here's one view of it. Here's the second view. And it gives us all that. Now we're going to go to the scan tool itself and spend the majority of the time on the tool. So let me get over to the car, make sure we are actually still on, because it could go to sleep, but we are still on. The vehicle is going to turn off in so many minutes. So what I'm going to do is just basically start it up. And that way we can run through different readings. Okay, it's in ready mode. And it does warn me, since I'm in this ready mode, that, let me turn the lights off. Okay, so let's go in here, and I'm going to hit Auto VIN. So it's scanning through, and notice it comes up with Genesis or Hyundai or Kia. I'm going to press Hyundai USA, and we're in a live shop. There's stuff going on. Okay, we're going to select this here, this Elantra 2004. We're going to hit select, and now it comes up on this setup here. So one of the things we want to do is we'll hit OK. And now it's going to go through and look at all the modules on the vehicle. So as it's doing that, you're going to see it's coming up pretty quick. Now you can see we got so far everything green, and that red with the dot means out of 24 modules here, if we go up, we see that everything is looking good so far. But we have an audio, navigation, and transmission code that is not on the car. System does not support the analysis. Okay. So we can get out of that, go back. We can look at the list like this of adaptive stuff. Here's the engine control functions. Reset adaptive values. Read the VIN. You can write a VIN. Evap leak test. And that's nice. You know, I want to stop here at evap leak test for a second. You know, when you're looking at evap, don't take the smoke machine out if you don't have to. Because what's putting the check engine light on in the vehicle? Okay, You know what's putting the check engine light on in the vehicle? The vehicle itself. So if it's going to fail something, you definitely want to make sure you run the evap test from the scan tool. And they do a real nice job here. So there's a whole bunch of neat stuff here to go through. Look at the list here of special functions. From power steering calibration or front cameras, the variant code, rear camera radar. You know, there is a lot of stuff here that you can do right off this tool. So that is a really nice setup there. If we go back and we want to go to OBD2, now we're going to connect into OBD2 functions. It's one thing that we should do, and we're going to look at the readiness test, right? We kind of showed you that screen before, but let's take a look at it. And when you look at all of this here, you can see all the readiness monitors, if they're complete or not. Pretty nice to give you that whole list. And if you went on one here, let's say, you know, oxygen sensor, let's see, select the item. It'll tell you if it's complete or not. You get a closer view. Current data. Let's look at the data on the vehicle. The data on the vehicle obviously would be our parameters. So you can see that there are things filled in. Our absolute vacuum here, we're at 28 inches. All right, so map minus baro, we're pretty good. And if you select any of these, like engine coolant, we can graph these things, which is pretty nice. And you'll see how the graph comes across here while I take a sip. So it's graphing pretty good, and there's that calculated load. We can record it. We'll go back to text. And you can deselect or select anything that you like. And look at all of the PIDs that they have. This is just generic, okay? So there was a nice thing here too. If you take a look at this one here, this had a DTC in this vehicle at 5,229 miles, okay? The vehicle now has 12,585. Sometimes the customers may not even know this. It may have been something Hyundai, Kia cleared out, you know, at the dealer. I'd have to ask the owner of the vehicle that. But you can get some good information right from generic. Let's take a look at these throttle positions. I want to show you something. I'm going to select 3 of them, and I'm going to graph them, and I'm going to step in the vehicle. So when we look at, I'm going to have to move that up. So absolute throttle, and let me go back to what I had there. That is, okay. So here's the accelerator pedals. I guess I must have hit somewhere on the screen. I'm going to step on the accelerator pedal, and we should see changing. And you see that? And you heard the motor go on too. And you see how fast that graph is. It does a real good job, and the motor cuts off here because it is a hybrid with a pretty good battery. And you could see the commanded throttle actuator. Every one of those humps did accelerator pedal B go up, and A and D and E mimic. They all have a different voltage value, okay? But that's because drive-by-wire, in case something drops out, there's not a mechanical connection. This is all electronic, right? And it does a very good job of that. So let's back out of that. Let's look if we got any diagnostic trouble codes. None there, pretty simple. Monitor test results. Now, this is where you see monitor test results. Okay, this is going to be your mode 6 information here. So it depends how each company actually, writes it out. There's always translations. So here we could go in and look at, that was the oxygen sensor, bank 1. Let's look at bank 2. So far all passes, right? And remember, if we click on any of them, we could graph it. No need to do that here. Let's look at the catalyst. Catalyst is in good shape. Passed, you had a maximum of 800, minimum of 0.062. Very, very good. EGR. So far all passes. Maybe one will be a fail, but look at the in-depth information you can get out of this. So I'm just going to go through quite a few of these here. They're all passing. There's evap. Evap monitor, this is a 20. That means you could have a very, very low. Purge flow monitor, making sure purge works. O2 heaters. Now heaters, look at this. You got a maximum value of 117.56, a minimum of 1391. We're reading 1526 Fahrenheit. That means this air-fuel ratio sensor, and again, they named it oxygen sensor, but it's really air-fuel, okay? So that is very, very good because an air-fuel ratio sensor is gonna have 4 to 6 wires, and they are gonna heat that up rather than 700 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, 6 to 800 on a regular zirconia sensor. They're gonna be over 1,000 degrees, and here we measured 1,524 degrees. So that way they can get into closed loop a lot quicker. And here we did the rear O2. And you can see, let's look at misfire. Now notice it had a value of 1 because let's look at the average, right? That's the average. You had 1 misfire. Every vehicle, even if it's a brand new vehicle right out of the factory, every car misfires because every drop of molecule of fuel you put in the cylinder, obviously you can't burn them all, right? That's why we have a catalytic converter. So the engine, the gasoline engine, is not 100% efficient, only about 20-something to 30-something% efficiency. A diesel's 30-something plus percent efficient. So keep that in mind, but look at your data here. And again, 1 misfire on the average, no major problem here. Well, see, this cylinder had a value of 1 on the misfire, where we had the last cylinder, 2 and 1, had 0. You see that in the box? So, no big deal. I mean, that's really nothing, but 1 cylinder is misfiring a little bit. A little note about when you change plugs, and the owner of this vehicle had a previous Hyundai, that the motor was replaced under warranty, the dealer put new plugs in and all that. Well, the dealer didn't torque the plugs, they just put them in by hand. And what they did, after a while, he wound up with a misfire on the vehicle. When we looked at the vehicle, it had a problem where you started to get gases from the combustion chamber coming up because the seal on the way the shell of the spark plug was actually having a problem. It looked like Corona. Corona is like a brown, not the beer you're thinking of, sorry about that, but like a Corona stain is basically a brownish type stain, usually from high voltage arcing, okay? But also compression gases come up and make it very similar looking to Corona stains, okay? So always keep that in the back of your head when you're diagnosing a car. Mode 5, test and component, not supported. That means that's like mode 8. And what's that for? Mode 8 was supposed to shut the evap vent solenoid in the back. Most manufacturers don't jerk with it, and they really haven't done it. Where do you get that info? Yeah, you can go into enhanced data to get that. Vehicle information. Now this is important. First of all, does the VIN number line up? Okay. So I always look at the last three, 5833, 5833, and if you want to compare the whole VIN number, of course, do that. But usually they're all correct if you got the last four. My experience, the TCU, that's the tranny computer, it's giving you all this good information here, and a lot of times verification codes or updates that you may find at TSB, a technical service bulletin, you got the information here to look it up. So that is what mode 9 is. And by the way, mode 9 in most inspection tests, they're going to be using mode 9 to make sure you're on the right vehicle. So if you ever are replacing a computer, please make sure you put in the correct VIN number in that computer. In-use performance tracking, this here is a little bit different. It is not our mode 0A10. That would be permanent DTCs. I would have to ask the people at Zenith here what this actually means. It says you can do a compression test and an ignition test. I don't know. Let's press spark ignition, and it gives us information on how many counts there are. Okay, that looks pretty neat. If you can see how each cylinder is maybe doing. Let's see what compression ignition here. Not supported, okay. So I'm not sure exactly what they wanted there. They didn't give us mode 10. They didn't actually list out all the modes in the exact order as generic. But again, it gives us enough information here to know what's going on, especially if you're working on a Hyundai or a Kia or a Genesis and Asian vehicles. Very, very good tool. Okay, let's go back here and let's get out of that and go into, I didn't want to go into the high voltage one, but we're going into it because my finger hit it real quickly. Internet not connected. I am connected to the internet. Let's see what happens here. And again, when you're doing things live, we are connected to the internet. Don't know why it's telling us we're not, but let's go into the engine computer. You know, I test things out beforehand, and it wants to make me look bad, doesn't it? Okay, get out of there. Let's see what happens with the engine controller. It says internet's not connected. Connection with the select system cannot be established. Switch off the power and the cable. Connection to. All right, let's see. Let's see what we can do here. So you can easily take a screenshot. If I'm not, there we go. Let's go to Google. You can get online. Go to cars. Well, it looks like it's doing something. Maybe the internet it doesn't like, but I am connected. Let me try. For some reason, it doesn't like the internet, so let me try getting this on a different network. We're going to our free internet here, and I don't like that either. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're on the internet. As you can see, we pulled up a page here. We went to cars, warranties, used cars for sale in the area. Okay, we don't need to know that. So let's see here. Now let's go back into the engine controller. And not sure why they have you know, connected to the internet for this. I'd have to ask them that or as well. DTC analysis. So of course there's none. Easy back function. Data analysis. Going to give us a list of data. And target RPM. When you see something like this target RPM, that's important. It's giving you exactly where it would like the idle at. So it gives you good stuff. Pressure sensor voltage 3.9, intake pressure 29.2, all your voltages, engine oil temperature, intake. One thing also you'd like is when you see the water temperature and the intake temperature on a totally cold vehicle. This one is not totally cold. They should be within 5 to 10 degrees of each other. Here we're at 76 degrees on oil temp, intake 72. And if you look at the water temperature, it's basically 103. Okay, so it did heat up somewhat when we drove the car in. And you have here a bunch of stuff that you could slide right over. Brake lamp off and on. Wow, a lot of different PIDs here. Let's go back to see if we can see the oxygen sensor one that they call oxygen sensor, which would be air fuel. And there's the 1.9 volts. Look at that. Remember I told you a Hyundai 1.9? That is absolutely perfect. Now the rear is an oxygen sensor. And many of today's vehicles, by the way, are using a rear air-fuel ratio sensor. This particular vehicle is not, but there are vehicles out there. Catalyst inactive. I mean, they got a lot of PIDs here. The evap purge control is activated. It's actually on. And remember some evap systems, and you heard the car start up automatically? That is what it should be doing. Look, you got input on the crank. Now this is real good to see if you got a problem on any of those cylinders. The crank degrees should be the same, okay? The EGR has 3.9 volts, air condition information. I mean, there's a lot of information, and there's your misfire counter, okay? So notice all these here, we have 0 counts right now. And you're not out of data. Look at this thing. Fuel tank level, canister, thank you, car. Throttle position, injection pulse width. Let's see what that pulse width goes on at an idle. Let's see where it actually hangs. This is GDI. You should have about a half of a millisecond to maybe a millisecond and a half. But see, it's gonna be hard to keep this thing just running. I can't, it's real tough to keep it going. But if I turn the AC on, then it will activate it probably. No, I guess the battery is the battery's pretty high up, so it ain't gonna do it. I don't think popping the hood, yeah, popping the hood on this one don't do it. Some cars, there is a way of doing that. I did not research what would make this particular one actually stay on. But good information to see what's happening, and a lot of it, right? So you can do things full screen. Look at all those PIDs. So you can go down like that. You can look at functions, min, max. So you can look at the values. You can reset min, max. Split screen. And then if you want, you can make a favorites list. You check the items and then put them in a box. Let's look at the actuation test. So now it's going to search. So you can make the main relay canister purge. Let's say check engine light. I could select that. And I could start, and the check engine light should be on in the car that you can't see from there. But yes, it is. And if I take it off, test ended, stop. Now the light should be off on this dash. And it is. So, fuel pump relay, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear it, but let's see if we can. Okay, fuel pump relay. Can you hear the click? So the fuel pump relay is working. We'll stop it. You can do canister purge. And then you could, this is really nice. Disable injector. Now when you do that, you can actually look at RPM down here and graph it. And then when you're doing that, okay, when you're disabling an injector, then you could see if anything happens, okay? But the car ain't running, so we would have to have the test run to actually do that. So very formidable type of stuff here. Let's recorded view. So you can go into Hyundai here. I'm not sure at Hyundai USA if there's a difference. There's the Elantra. And oh, they got stuff like this in here. Battery data. And look at this. Minimum cell voltage, accessory charging. Oh, these are, okay, those are screenshots that I had saved before on a particular car, this car actually. The actuation test, we looked at right there. You got a bunch of them, special functions. Let's see what the first one is. So you have reset and adaptive values. Now when you go in to do this, it's basically going to tell you that the PCM, the O2, fuel rail sensor, mass air, catalyst, all these things here may be reset. Now we're not going to do that. We're going to cancel that. But why would you want to do an adaptive reset? Oh, maybe you had high fuel trim numbers, right? Maybe because the fuel pump went bad, or you had a problem with a canister overfueling, right? Whatever the reason, many times you have to do reset adaptive fuel trim. If you don't have that ability, like the scan tool has, you may want to get yourself a 1 ohm 10 watt resistor. Make sure everything is off on the car. This has a power button. Turn it off, and then you would take the battery cables off. And because this had, I think, 20 or 30 computers on board, yeah, probably within a half hour, you put the 10 watt 1 ohm resistor between the cables off the battery and let everything drain down slowly. You will go back to base settings, okay? Base settings. Auto detect configurations. So for certain reasons here, if you wanted to reconfigure or reset configurations, transmission, or certain other things here, it would tell you what to do. We're not going to do that either. You want to read the VIN. Very, very important to read the VIN. Make sure the 17 digits come up. We're not going to do that. You want to write the VIN. Real easy to write the VIN. Gives you the directions right here, what to do. And many tools do that. Evap leak test. Okay, so here it says, to check the evaporative system and fuel leakage when the evaporator system relative repair is done or a component is replaced, enable condition, vehicle stop, no DTCs, fuel 15 to 85%. Purge solenoid, the canister vent, the fuel tank pressure sensor, and these are all the different codes. So let's say okay. Okay. Detect DTC. There's none in there. And okay to start the test. So it says the test is used to function check for the evap system and a leakage check. So the fuel level is at 12%. And it should run the test. Now, maybe a certain state here, in the sake of time, I'm sure this does run the test, but I'm not seeing anything change here with that percentage or PSI. Since probably there's no pressure in it, may not do it. ECU information displayed. Let's look at the high voltage motor. Let's see what comes up on that to give you an idea. See if there's any DTCs, always check there first. Data, all the data on the motor itself. And again, it looks like, you know, certain things are going to take a little more time. That's kind of the norm, right? And here you have a bunch of information. The inverted DC link voltage is 234 degrees, volts rather. And there it goes up. The auxiliary battery is still good. That means that's your cranking battery, 13.4 volts. That's why I said we didn't need to put a battery maintainer on this vehicle. DC interlock sensing voltage is 0.6 volts. That's a thing that would take it out. Drive motor temperature, inverter temperature, resolver. You have a whole bunch of stuff dealing with the motor here. And there's your UVW. There's the U phase, minus 11. The V is 10, and W is 1. So a bunch of good stuff there. Let's see if there's the functions, what the functions say. Just min and max on that. Okay, no DTCs if there's any in there. Let's look at the battery real quick. Because that one, I showed you some screenshots. Let's see what that battery is doing now. Take a sip here. Okay, so data, let's look at the data. So here you can see the minimum cells, and look at all the numbers changing here. Max cell, how it changes from one number to another number. The max cell voltage is 366, the lowest is 364, that means it's a really balanced battery. Cell number 34, that's the maximum cells they have. Tells you the temperature of the battery. The ambient temperature is 66 degrees in here, 59 in the battery module. It tells you the accumulated charge current here in amp hours. And I can tell you from doing hybrid EV classes that this is some really good information. And if I want, there's my isolation resistance. I have 100,000 ohms of resistance. If I don't have that right number, I'll get an isolation fault, okay? And look at my batteries. They're pretty damn good, all these cells being, 366, 364, pretty damn close. So it's a balanced battery. And here's our 64 different voltage cells right there. And there's the maximum internal resistance, 1.5 megohms. The average resistance, 1.5 megohms. So some really good information here. State of charge of the battery is 52%. And look at this. This is crazy. Battery cell voltage for a 12-volt battery. Wow, I've never seen that before. I don't know. That must be a calculation how they're doing that. And they're only showing me 4 cells right here that I can see. Pretty neat. And again, any tool like this, when you're just getting into the tool, you need to spend some time with it, right? Battery data analysis. Now, here is the eye candy. And again, you can take pictures of this stuff a few different ways. So I just took a screenshot. See where it says screenshot? Then we'll go back. And then if I want to save that screenshot, I can save it, confirm it, and I'm done. Okay, so if we go back here, gotta find my way back. There we go. So here we see the high and the low. You can scroll down the whole list real nice. You can look at details if you want it this way. You can create a report. If we want this report here, you can click on it. You can email it. You can print it. I'll send that out. Making me wait. Internet. We'll try to see if I can get out of that. Okay, it did it. Good enough. We go out. All the voltage readings again. Pretty nice setup. Actuation test here in this battery module. So you have fan on. And this is important. Let's put the fan on number 6. Hit ready. And I don't know if it'll give us a temperature reading. Okay, I'm going to put that there on, when did it come up in battery temp? Okay, so there's battery temperature. I'm going to select this. And we went down a half a degree. We went from 52 to 51.5. Okay. I don't know if it'll go any further, putting some air through there. And I don't think you could hear the fan. Here, I'll stop it. let me go to the highest number. So they're using a 8-speed type of fan. 9-speed. Wow. Hard for you to hear out there, but I kind of hear the noise going on in the car. Let me see if I stick my head in, if it makes it better. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's an important thing, to make sure the fan is blowing to cool the battery down. Let me stop that test. And if I go back there, there should be no noise. Go right back to where I was. Silence. So that's how you always check to see if bidirectional is working. Good thing to do. Main relays, you can make sure they're on or off. Some special functions. A state of charge calibration for the battery. That's really important. Some car companies like Ford used to do that. It really helps the battery. Inspection of the 12-volt battery status. You can see how that goes. And if we want to go into other units, rear view mirror, take a look, see what they got in rear view mirror. 24 different modules on here. So there's just some different things about the mirror, which is, they give you a lot of info there. They're looking at a bunch of stuff. Front view camera, this will be maybe a little bit more detailed. Of course, we got a camera right up front. Let's look at the data first. And that camera, obviously, you know, for ADAS systems, basically will show you if you're getting too close to something or whatever. So here you have different calibrations. So if you had to calibrate that particular camera, which is super important, variant code settings, because maybe, you know, you did some work on the car, and nowadays, remember, if you're doing glass on the vehicle, glass is always moving. It's never totally solid. You put the wrong type of glass in a vehicle, that camera cannot see correctly, okay? It's just like having a bad set of eyeglasses. So make sure if you ever have glass replaced, or if it's not OE glass, you know, take a look at that and make sure the camera, if you're doing any ADAS stuff, you're using the right software and you have the right targets and everything. And this is all set up to do ADAS systems, as we said in the beginning. So here you got the radar on the left corner if you wanted to see what's going on with radar. Let's see what it says there. So it looks like some things here, they got -40 temperature. To me, that's always an open circuit. But again, not being familiar with that software, just going through here, I would have to look that up. You know, I always say, I wish I knew everything, got the G and a half and O. If I had the other half and O, and D would be God. Only God knows everything, right? So that's where we go into service information, like ALLDATA, ProDemand, MotoLogic, right? And see what's what. Special functions. There's more coding on this stuff here. You got a whole bunch of different things. Virtual engine sound system. What in the world is that? Let's see what this comes up with. Sound plays 5 seconds. I don't know. I'm going to select this thing. I don't know what it does. Look at that. Oh, I know what that's for. So on electrified vehicles, you know, when you're backing up and it's in electric mode, right? You want people to know that you're coming, or an animal. Now, you know, when I first had one of the first electric type of cars, you know, the Honda was always a gas and didn't go into full electric, you know, all the time, like on takeoff. So you heard a Honda type of hybrid. But when you had a Prius and the battery was at a state of charge, well, you couldn't really hear them coming. And then, you know, even a Chevy Volt, you didn't hear them. And nowadays you hear a lot of this type of noise. You know, if you get in any type of hybrid or EV, you hear some humming. Not as loud as that hum, but they do have a hum. So maybe you get a whole bunch of cars and you can make some music, right? Play some stuff. Pretty neat. So let's get out of that. But to show you, this is really a damn good scan tool here. If we look at power steering, remember a lot of these steering systems now are power controlled. And if you remember, on some of these Hyundai Kias, the little rubber bushing, if you get a lot of play in the wheel, the cluck, 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 and hear the cluck, 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 go look down at the bushing near the end of the steering column. The coupler goes bad, okay? Now give Dorman a plug there. Not here to sell you anything, but I want to give Dorman a plug. They do sell those discs and they're better than the OE ones. So check that out. We've used them here. So air condition, let's look at some data analysis here. Not much information. Special functions. Oh, steering. I wasn't in air condition. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was at. So steering angle calibration, very, very important thing to do when you're maybe putting a rack in or you change something before a wheel alignment. Real good stuff here. Now see this? Part replacement, power steering motor, or you replace the ECU, or MDPS tuning settings, backup and right, steering wheel torque to 0. These are all important things that you actually have to look for on today's vehicles. So today we showed you, gave you a walkthrough this Zenith tool here. Let's get back to the main menu. And it has a lot of capability, not only for you know, Asian vehicles, but if you go into diagnosis, there's a whole bunch of different car companies they have right here, okay? And they do heavy duty truck. So that is pretty nice. And some of these cars, of course, we don't see here in the US, but it's a global tool and you can go by letter. Like if I wanted a Fuso, I can go there and, you know, get right onto that truck. Not many do that. Services, ADAS system, right? You go in there, brake pad replacement, engine oil reset. Oh my God, you love stuff like that, right? Brake bleeding procedure, battery reset. Let's talk about a battery reset. Let's see if Hyundai has any special procedure. Hyundai USA. Then if you hit OK, battery management system. Now remember, nowadays when you change a lot of 12-volt batteries, or some of them are up to 13 volts, you know, you have to do certain calibrations. Here, I think this is mostly, but it does say inspection of the 12-volt battery, state of charge calibration, state of charge function corrections. So they do have some stuff in here, and that's pretty neat. So that is in the, get out of here. And that's in the service part. You got injection coding, so you can code injections, EGR function, regen if you're on a diesel, ECU reset, airbag, VIN numbers, immobilizer, seat activation, trunk activation. Let's see if this one has trunk activation. Hyundai. Let's see if I can pop this dude's trunk. I gotta pick it. An Elantra. I guess it ain't in here. They probably don't have it. Okay, we'll just back out. I just, for fun, was going to do that if it had it. Auto stop. Oh, does that annoy the hay out of me? So if you want to look at auto stop stuff, you can go into the different features to see if you can shut it off, put it on. Wiper. Let's see, lights. So here's lights. Here's the Elantra. Not having this year for whatever reason. All right, in the sake of time, we won't go through that, I guess. But you would look, and as you go through this, you know, antenna check, gearbox, coding, TPMS, sunroof, door locks, idle. I mean, look at the functions they have in here. And of course, not every one of them work for every vehicle, right? But that is the tool here. Now, you're going to have to get back to your lunch. We're about done. I do want to go over one thing. We have coming up, if you're interested, this weekend coming up, we're down, Sweet of Myself, heavy duty brake system. We're going to have this at the Dorman Proving Grounds in Comar, PA. We do have a couple of seats open. And if you're interested in a hands-on Part 1 lab scope, an 8-hour class, it'll be up here. We'll not only work on test boards, we'll be on vehicles. And that is on the December 13th on a Saturday. Oh, in Mahopac, New York at the ATTS Training Center. So hope to see you back. We want to thank you. If you have any questions, and by the way, we do in-shop training, you can contact me. But we want to thank you for your time. Get back to your lunch, and thank you for spending time with us. We'll see you in another Dorman Lunch and Learn in November.